joining me now, or joining us, excuse me, now, joining the show now.
I'll sit this one out.
No, that was a mistake. Sorry, Ben. I didn't mean to sneaky insult you.
I don't have an ego about that. That's
He's
fine.
My co-host for Jazz Pre, Half, and Post. He's the coach, Coach Tim LaComb. What's going on, Coach?
Hello, my friends.
Jazz are 0-2. First game, I thought they played hard. Second game, it got away from them about 6 minutes into the game, and then they really never recovered. Just kept getting worse and worse. There's no reason to panic this year. We knew this was going to come for the Jazz, but where are they compared, I guess, to what you would have expected through 2 games?
Well, I was really impressed with game one. I think you look at things from, you mentioned the competitive angle, and I thought the Jazz competed really hard. I thought every guy that was in there was trying to win the game. And sometimes that's not always the case in the NBA. But I feel like everybody was a kind of one spirit, one mind, and played really hard. And it was a couple of plays here and there, that cost them that game. The other night it was one of those games where it was a combination of a bunch of new guys in the situation, and you saw more just communication things. When Buddy Hield gets left wide open, things aren't exactly being communicated out on the floor the way that that the Jazz typically do it. He got off to a great start, and the Jazz just could not find any offense. The offense was really spotty. It felt like their offense affected their not competitiveness, but their defense. Their willingness to be right on the edge like they were the night before, and that game definitely got away from them. And I told Jake, there's going to be more of those games, I think, this year where young guys trying to figure out how to stay in a game, and that's going to be part of the process too.
I love working with you for a lot of reasons, but one is you've been a coach. You've been there and you've coached at a high level, and it's fun to pick your brain. So I'm curious how you deal with certain situations, when you were a coach. And I'll throw this take by you because I thought what was concerning, and you mentioned Buddy Hield, and I told this to Ben earlier. Buddy Hield is in the league for one reason, and one reason only, and I guarantee he was on the scouting report and it said one thing under his name. It said shooter, really good shooter. And then to see, and you talk about communication, and feel free to elaborate, but I want to know what it's like as a coach to have sat your team down and said, don't leave this guy. He's a shooter. It's the only reason he's in the league. And somehow the guy is wide open time after time. How do you keep your sanity?
Well, in fairness to the Jazz on him, I think Buddy's kind of having a resurgence because he's playing with the best shooter of all time. And, watching the game, the energy that Steph brings to offense and what that does to the psyche of the defense. It's like the roadrunner running through offensive sets with no rhyme or reason, and then all of a sudden, he curls off a screen and he's open for a three. So part of Buddy's, night was made by Steph's reputation. But then, the hard part is when you allow that dude to then get going, make his first, make his second. And I think it was the third one. He was completely wide open and lost in transition. And when I talk about communication, much like the middle linebacker in football is kind of has the job of making the call, and everybody echoes that. When you're in defensive transition, part of it is, the first part is to sprint back. You've got to be in the right locale. The second part of it is to identify personnel. And that is done by, literally guys that are back pointing and talking and helping the guys that are running to understand who's where. And so when I talk about communication, sometimes it's in a switch when a switch isn't communicated, and you saw that the other night with the Memphis game and some of those key possessions. Again, young guys are going to make mistakes. It's just part of it. It doesn't mean they're not good. Doesn't mean you make a blanket statement of guys in his freshman or rookie year and say that guy's not good. No, it's just he's young and he's dealing with it and he's struggling. All these guys are very talented. But that communication piece, Jake, that's when I talk about it, that's what I'm talking about.
I thought Keontae George came into the regular season in a really good place, had a fantastic preseason, shot the ball well. and then had a rough first night against Memphis and started out okay against Golden State, but his numbers are down even from last year, shooting 23% from the floor, 28% from the three-point line, only 60% from the free throw line. Again, extremely small sample size, but he just looks like he's pressing already, and I worry about that for him a little bit in his second year. Where are you on Keontae George?
Yeah, I do too. I mean, because so much of this game's played between the ears, and, you can't help but either get momentum from what's going on or maybe get pulled back by what's going on. I thought Keontae had an incredible summer league. I thought that he really, approached the summer in terms of just his development. You can see that he made great strides, and in the preseason he was nails. It was 44% from three, and certainly assisted turnovers. Was better. Again, I think the other night was a little bit of a mirage in that, he ended up with all the pressure. He ended up with a lot of shots late in the shot clock, 4 shots. And I think for Keontae, particularly early, almost be a little bit more selective, not like conservative about your shot selection, but certainly want to get shots that you can make consistently. And so, yeah, I mean, he's got to flip the script, for himself, just to believe that he can do it. But right now, he's, like you said, it's much like last year in that, the shots are going up, but they're not going in. And that's what's got to kind of change here for Keontae.
Where are you at on tonight's opponent, Dallas, with the addition of Klay Thompson?
Well, I think Dallas is always going to be, with Kyrie and Luka, just particularly in a 5-7 game series, it just makes life difficult. Talk about having to really be locked into 2 guys that are equally able in different ways to hurt you. You add Klay Thompson to the mix, and I think that Klay can benefit from a change of scenery. I do think that the ball movement. It's going to be different than he was used to because these 2 guys have it in their hands, but they do a great job of finding guys if the play calls for it. So I think they'll be ultra competitive. I think the young guy, their young crew, Derek Lively is a guy that I really like, and I thought he had a great year. So I think they've got some great young talent. And then they've got those veterans at some new additions, and I think that they'll be squarely in the mix, kind of top part of the West, top 6, for sure they'll be in that. And I think that they'll be a very difficult out in the playoffs as usual.
Well, Keontae George has struggled some, even though I know Taylor Hendricks was 0 of 6 in his last game. I've been impressed that even when he hasn't shot well, he's still doing other things that help the team. I think Taylor has maybe been one of the greener flags or better signs that we've seen to the first 2 games.
I totally agree. In the case of Keontae, I think, his playmaking certainly improved, decision-making certainly improved. Now if he can just get a little jump from his shooting percentage, get a little momentum from that, then he can actually take off. Taylor Hendricks, in my mind, has been a major positive. His shots will fall and they won't. But I think if he can, and I've said this, if he can defend the way he's defending, and he did a great job. I went back and watched those possessions of him guarding Ja, and he certainly was not, out of plays. Screens. He did a great job of recovering, getting back in front. His length is such a great asset, and some of the stuff, some of the plays down the stretch he was involved in, and again, just being able to be more vocal and take over a play. When a screen comes guard to guard, you take command of it and make sure that there's communication, and you just don't allow 2 guys to go with one and allow, a great player to have a shot. So I think that's the thing with Taylor, but you've got to remember this kid would be a sophomore, a junior in college at this point. And, I think some of the things that everybody talked about, his upside, and starting to see some of that now.
How hard is it going to be for Lowry being the, I don't want to be mean here, but it was certainly by far the best offensive option right? I mean, being by far the top of the game plan, top of the scout, how hard is that going to be for him?
Well, it's hard when you also say that, his strength is when he has just a little bit of window of space, doesn't even have to put the ball on the floor, and that's where he's at his best, and teams know that. And you're seeing it now. They're really being physical, and they're crowding him. He's not getting the number of looks. They're not opposed to switching out on him, in actions, so that he does not get that little window of space. And so he's working to try to, and Coach has talked about this, Coach Hardy, they're working on, an isolation package right now to try to get him a little bit more comfortable face up and maybe one dribble or two. And I'll just say it, I think right now it's very clunky. It's not going great. And, sometimes a guy's strength is his strength, but I like that they're working on it. And, if it could become something like the Mavericks used back in the day with Nowitzki, where they just give it to him on the nail, really space the floor with shooters, maybe that's something that they can get to. But right now, it's not looking real natural and comfortable for Lowry beyond all that. I mean, that first night was exactly what you want from him. A guy gets 14 free throws, 15 shot attempts, and he had 35 points. That he just played, he played really, really good that first night.
A couple of surprises around the NBA. The Nuggets are winless through 2 games, and yeah, it's only 2 games, but they've been outscored by 20 points total. They just have not been competitive in a lot of these games. Sacramento is also winless in their first 2 games. I know some people are excited about what they were able to do. And then undefeated teams, Cleveland and Boston. Boston's certainly not a surprise. But the Lakers, also 3-0 in the Western Conference. What's caught your eye around the NBA in the first week of the season?
Well, J.J. Redick's definitely, changed the way the Lakers are playing. They're moving a lot more. It looks a little bit more contemporary now than it used to. It was kind of old school, and LeBron with the ball in his hands and trying to create an advantage, like much of the 80s and 90s were played. But he's got him moving around. I think that they did a great job of assembling, guys that can get in there and do some of that stuff. And JJ Redick is he's got a unique mind for hoops. So that'll be interesting to watch. This definitely got my attention. And yeah, I'm a little surprised about the Nuggets, but it's, we've seen it. You have your meteoric rise, and everybody starts to kind of figure you out. You lose pieces due to free agency and guys going to get a little bit more. And your team's not exactly what it was, and you've got to kind of always re-identify, and I think that's the space they're in a little bit right now.
Okay, I'm going to go off the beaten path a little bit here. Last thing from me, Coach. I think all of us, like all us decent people, have a certain part of us that when somebody does something nice or gets something for us, like a gift of some sort, and it's not necessarily something we like, we still say, "Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'll use it," or whatever, because there's a decency to it. I want to know how far that would go with you, Coach. And if you look at the statue that they unveiled of Dwayne Wade, it looks nothing like him. And when I say nothing like him, I mean like nothing like him. If you were standing there and the artist is right there and they rip the cover off that thing and you're like, "Oh, that's so bad," would you tell the artist like, "Oh, you did great, thanks, pal"? Or would you have them tear it down?
Well, knowing the art business the way I do, I don't know if you know, I was an art agent at one point in my life. But there would have been many checks and balance or checks, to see. You would not be surprised, put it that way. We actually did. When I say we, I worked for an artist, Dennis Smith, and Dennis did the art. He did the sculpture at Deer Valley of Stein Eriksen.
Okay.
And Stein was one of the funnest guys I'd ever met, but he was very serious about his appearance. And he was he had a nice head of hair, and he was into his hair. And so I think we had maybe 13 or 14 times where he came down to, check and approve. But to answer your question, like a normal human being, yeah, I would have turned and walked the other way. I would have been like, that ain't me. And when you get a statue of me, let me know, and I'll come back.
I don't know who that is, but
Yeah.
that's
I
not.
have
don't.
no idea. who
Statue's
that
great.
is.
I don't know who it is.
I mean, I don't know if they handed you the wrong picture, the wrong guy in the photo. I don't know if you had a Google mishap or whatever, but that is not me.
You know what? It makes
That
me.
is the. Oh, go ahead.
It makes me appreciate that John and Carl actually kind of look like John and Carl. They're not great. They're not perfect. Our guy, was it Brent Bustwell? Is that what we decided what his name was? Best Bustwell. At least it kind of looks like them.
Is that the same guy who does the NFL thing? I didn't think he did John and Carl, did he?
Oh, no, you're probably right.
We're talking about
Yeah,
the
we're talking
NFL.
about different people.
That guy is amazing.
The guy who does the
NFL
NFL Hall of Fame.
Yeah. That guy, Best Bustwell or whatever. That guy is
That dude is incredible. I know Blair really well.
Blair
Buswell. And if you have an opportunity to tour his studio, it's pretty amazing.
No, that
Dude
guy. Find that guy. That's my point. You know what I mean? I don't think that guy did John and Carl.
But
that is a different person.
They are way better than the Dwayne Wade one. No one walks by and is like, oh, they got Mark Price and Jerry Rice up there.
Yeah, right. No. And I don't know. But would you be nice to the artist?
No.
Well, I would. I mean, they tried, right? But it was like, I think I'd be a little more frustrated at the Heat, to be honest with you.
Right.
Yeah, now this thing is stuck here for the rest of whatever.
I mean, it literally
Lloyd
looks
said
like a creature from a Marvel.
Lloyd
comic book.
Lloyd tweeted out, I'll give him credit. He tweeted out, it looks like Lawrence Fishburne.
Yeah, right.
It really
Yeah.
does.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough.
The artist formerly known as D. Wade.
Brian Chalice is who did John and Carl.
Yeah,
right.
it wasn't
It was
Bustwell.
not Bustwell. Okay.
No.
I'm mixing up my
No, that guy is
my
awesome.
bust artists.
No, find
Hey,
that guy.
And I'm gonna get because I like Blair Buswell.
Buswell. I
It's
know,
the
but
guy
Ben
who-
and I thought he should change his name to
Bustwell.
Bustwell.
Because he makes good
I got
busts.
you.
You know, 'cause-
I couldn't figure out what you're doing. Now, see, I'm old. You're taking advantage of an old fella.
No, we're not. We should reset those jokes. Yeah,
Yeah, it's an inside
we
joke.
shouldn't have too many inside jokes. That
Shout
was
out
an
to
inside
Blair.
joke.
He's an incredible artist and a great guy.
Such a cool tie to this community. Are you kidding? That's a great story. We're not mocking in the slightest. In fact, Dwayne should have hired him.
Yeah. If you want a great detail bust, he would be or face. He would be your guy.
No, we were talking marketing, like Bustwell. You know, like it's
absolutely,
self-descriptive
100%.
right there. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like some actor taking the stage name Act Good.
Oscar.
Oscar
Hey,
Actwell.
don't we have a good kind? We have a good kind in the arena.
Mike. Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
the good kind.
Man, that is brilliant. Oscar Actwell. I mean, that's a layup. That you become famous overnight with that.
Yeah.
You could not act a lick, and people would still be like, "Well, his name's Oscar Actwell, so gotta hire." It'd be like drafting Bronny James. You don't even have to be good.
Yeah. The name does it all.
Yeah, Coach, you were the best. Thank you, and I'll see you tonight.
Hey, I will see you tonight. Sounds great, guys. Thank you.
See you, buddy.